Hey guys, Kyle Friedel here with the Interstate Batteries Proclinic webinar team. So glad you joined us today. We're going to get started in just a few minutes as we wait for people to join the call. I do want to let you know this webinar will be recorded. Open up your Q&A toolbar in the bottom of the Zoom window. You'll see the Q&A tool. Open that up, pop in questions that you have as we go. We want to answer those live, and if we don't get to them during the webinar, we've got 20 minutes at the end, after about 35-40 minutes of content, where we will take questions live and answer those. And if you have questions about other things besides testing and charging, maybe you want to know about AGM and EFB batteries, you can also go to interstatebatteries.com/proclinic and you can hear the on-demand version of that webinar we did last month. Why do we do this? Well, our mission is to have a positive impact on your business, on your profession. Whether you're a student, instructor, technician, service writer, manager, owner, we want to have a positive impact. We do this in several ways. One, we can make you more productive and efficient. Our route service managers essentially manage your entire battery inventory, which batteries you should have, how many you should have. They also rotate out batteries, right? This makes for a better battery. Essentially, a fresher battery is a better battery. So they will take out batteries that are 3 to 4 months old, take them back to the shop and recharge them and put new batteries on your shelf. That rotation policy can save you a lot of warranty work, a lot of unhappy customers, and that's essentially makes it a better battery. And these batteries cost you nothing. If you're a qualified dealer, our consignment program means you pay nothing until that battery sells. So that can help increase or reduce your expenses, increase your revenue. And lastly, we're the battery experts. That's all we do, right? That's why we have this really fancy lab. That's why we have Jeff and Gale. They have been doing this for nearly 100 years, between owning shops, working in shops, working on cars. They know their stuff and they care, right? They want to help. So you're talking to the experts here. If at any time during the webinar you're interested in hearing more about becoming an Interstate dealer, you'll see a QR code down below. Please just scan that, and you'll be taken to a survey that asks 6 or 7 questions, and then someone will contact you and see if it's a good fit. It may not be, but if it is, we are dedicated to having a positive impact on your business. So that's enough of me. Let me hand it off to Jeff and Gale to talk testing and charging. Thanks.
So we're going to talk about the agenda today that we're going to go over, looking at conductance testing. We're going to talk about the effects of temperature. So this is kind of the battery fundamentals.
Sure.
And why would we do the battery fundamentals?
One of the things that I find, if I know how something operates inside, I can do a better job of testing that specific type of component. Whether it's a battery or it's a starter or whatever it may be, I can do a better job of doing that. Also, we've got some new folks out here that are just starting out in this field. We've got some seasoned people out here also. Not as seasoned as me, but seasoned.
Well, we're getting close, aren't we? So we're also going to do kind of a walk through the Interstate Battery Test Lab, and the reason behind that is we want you guys to understand why we do the testing here. So it's very important for you guys to understand that we've got to have these batteries tested to make sure they meet our specifications and our qualifications. So we'll go through all that. We're also going to talk about testing and charging, which is always fun.
Always.
We're going to talk about the different types of testers, the testing best practices, and we'll talk about the chargers. And we're also going to talk about the charging best practices.
Yes, absolutely.
So, there's so many things we've got to go over today in a very short period of time. So we're going to go ahead and get jumping into it.
We're going to talk about batteries, obviously. That's what we do. And so in doing that, we want to talk about batteries creating energy, even though it may not look like a good picture of that. But I've got that voltmeter connected to it. What do I get out of those 2 pieces of lead? I get 0 volts. Now that's important because we take these same plates and we immerse those in electrolyte solution consisting of sulfuric acid and water. What do we get? We get the chemical action taking place between those, and now we get 2+ volts in that situation. So now we have a battery that's emitting electrons through it, power availability, and pressure behind it being voltage, pressure pushing it. Now we've got something there that it's pushing through, and that's a resistance pushing back against those electrons, whether it's a starter, it's a test light, whatever it may be. So in that situation, when we talk about resistance, there's two types. There's a DC and there's an AC. DC is just a resistance called resistance and a resistor. So that's in the circuit, but it does the same thing. It resists those electron flows. In AC terms that we use in a conductance tester, it is inputting an AC signal, which is like this, which is actually called impedance. Same thing as resistance, it's just in a different terminology for AC. And so we're placing that impedance through that battery, and we've got resistance within the battery, and that resistance is going to be going through mathematics, through an algorithm, and we're going to come out with a result on this battery saying, okay, it's rated or measured, it's rated at 700, but it's measuring 640. Measuring 640 in comparison, we're now having a good battery or a battery that's low on CCA values. And so this amount is going to show us that this is probably a good battery.
So Gale, what are we looking at here?
Well, in this case, we're looking at a water bath that's showing or testing AGM batteries in this scenario. AGM batteries at a certain temperature, because we're doing different types of testing. We may be doing long-term cycle testing, short-term testing, but we're having to do this at a certain temperature, so we're raising the temperature within these, maybe to even as much as 167 degrees.
So Gale, what kind of tests do we run over here?
In this case, we're paralleling a large group of batteries where we're testing those all similar situations at the same time. We may be charging or we may be discharging. We have all these connected through this microde here. This machine is an elaborate machine that has the ability to either charge or discharge at certain rates, but we don't need them in the water bath. We may need them only at 77 or 75 degrees.
Okay, Gale, I'm familiar with this room. I'm very familiar with this machine.
Yes, you cut the tops off the batteries here.
I've got a couple batteries open in my day. So, Gale, why is it important to have a teardown room? What do we do in here? What are we trying to accomplish?
You know, one of the things that happens, unfortunately, is that the customer comes in, the battery's tested, and it goes to then our distributors, and our distributors find out that that battery's still good, or we need to analyze to make sure it's good or bad, whichever it is. So we do the ultimate testing on the battery. We go through charging, making sure it's charged correctly, all of the process to make sure that that battery is really bad. Because if that battery's not really bad and we test it good, it's not good for the customer. They just got a new battery, but that covered up their real problem within that vehicle. So we want to make sure we get it right, test it correctly, give a yes or no answer to whether the battery is good or bad.
So if we're talking about voltmeters are a little bit different than what they used to be years ago. So we've got analog that we used years ago. We've got digital now. So they're designed to basically look at the battery itself, or you can even do testing looking at voltage drops in cables or whatever. But they're designed to be able to look at a point A and a point B and see what the differences is in between. All right, so Gale, let's talk about some of these hydrometer readings. We've done this for many years.
Oh, yes. And hydrometers not used as much today as they used to be, because a lot of those batteries are sealed on top and you don't have access. But those that do have access, a hydrometer is still a good tool.
Yes, sir.
And it measures the specific gravity level of sulfuric acid to water, measuring actually the weight of it, and so it gives you a measurement reading saying battery good or bad, because it says how much sulfuric acid is still remaining in that electrolyte.
So why can we not just use the voltmeter? Is it not accurate enough?
That voltmeter is very accurate, but it's a tool that does one thing, measures the pressure difference between the positive and negative. Hydrometer is testing each individual cell to see how much sulfuric acid is still within that electrolyte.
So what you're saying is the hydrometer is still a fantastic tool.
It is. It's still a very valid tool. We still use it here.
Yes, we do. We have a $3,000 unit though. So Gale, why don't you talk a little bit about these carbon pile load testers as well?
You know, a carbon pile load tester has been around for a long time, and it actually mimics a starter pull or starter draw when you go to start your vehicle. We place it at 1/2 of that CCA value. For example, if a battery is rated at 700 CCA, we apply 350 amps across that battery and then watch the voltage go down and then check to see how low that voltage goes during the load while the load is on. And that way we can tell if the battery's good or not. It's a dynamic test. It mimics the starter itself. So it's a very valid test even today.
Well, and talking about the carbon pile, so we look at this and let's just say that there's a temperature variation that these guys are tested in the shop, and let's say it's 110 degrees in that shop. Is that going to make a difference as far as the outcome prediction?
It always makes a difference in the battery, and it always makes a difference in the outcome, the result. For example, when we say draws the battery down during this load, it says, we say 9.6 volts at the end of that 15 seconds while the load is still applied at 70 degrees.
Bingo.
Obviously, when you go down, that battery is not as efficient as we've talked about before. So we have a situation where it could go to 9.4 and still be good if the temperature is extremely cold, right?
Yeah, so we'll actually put together the chart for this, so you guys will actually be able to. Now, a lot of these load testers that are out there, carbon pile, have still got the scale on the side of it, so you want to make sure that when you are doing the load test, you are looking at that scale to make sure where it's going to fail at or pass at. So look at that temperature scale. We'll also, like I said, have this incorporated into the slides as well.
Yeah. So we're going to show a little bit of that.
Oh, yes.
Good. That sounds fantastic.
So let's talk a little bit about the conductance testers and how vital, important, once again, that they are. So most of these will basically automatically do a factor for temperature, not all. So we keep stressing this as we look at these videos that we're going to be showing, talking about how these things react to the different temperatures.
Actually, we're doing a hands-on test here just a bit.
I forgot we are.
Yes.
So we're doing these tests to make sure you guys understand that there is a big difference between 77 and the one that we're looking at is going to be 13 degrees
13.
and then 165 degrees.
What do we need to understand about voltage or state of charge of the battery? You and I both taught for many years to thousands of technicians about the 12.66 for the full state of charge battery.
Correct.
That's changed, hasn't
Oh
it?
yeah. Well, look at all the things we've added on the vehicles now.
Yes.
Well, the battery had to change.
It had to change. So we have a higher voltage now that we
Correct.
need to talk to about 100% state of charge. It's no longer 12.66.
Exactly.
In fact, that's about 75% state of charge. As we look at this chart, it shows a little bit of that, right?
Correct. Yeah, so now when we look at a 100% state of charge of battery, if it's sitting there static, so we have to say static because if people look at this and they say, well, hey, Jeff said it was 12.84 and that was 100% state of charge, but I checked it while it's in my vehicle and it's at 12.5. Okay, there's a computer pulling from that battery. So keep that in mind. We talk about these voltages that are on this chart here, that's all static voltages. That's with nothing attached to it. So we want to talk about these different testers and what you're looking at as we're going through all these different voltage readings.
Yes, and making sure that you understand what is correct, what is.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to talk about temperature. Temperature is an important factor with a battery. It's also with me. For example, when I get outside this Texas heat, I get hot. Well, when it's really cold in Minnesota, for example, during the winter, when they show throwing water in the air and it becomes ice crystals, that's cold. So temperature is an important factor for batteries. So high heat increases conductance rate, giving you an inaccurate measure of the state of charge. For example, it's going to up it to a higher level. And it's kind of like Jeff running downhill on the 440. Oh yeah, you got it, buddy. Anyway, so extreme cold impedes that flow of electrons and resists that, giving you an inaccurate measure of the state of health of that battery as we're talking about. It's just the opposite of the high heat. So make sure your tester takes temperature into the equation, buddy.
And you know what we did, Gale? We actually took a battery and we took the same battery and we did 3 different tests on it.
All right, we're going to do a pulse test on this battery that's been in our heat box. It's at about 165 degrees, and we're going to see if it affects the pulse test. We've got a good battery, 12.7 volts, 782 CCA, and look at that temperature, 165 degrees. It's a hot summer day. And we are at room temperature here doing the test on this battery. It's about maybe 76 degrees. Okay, we can see we have a good battery. We're registering 12.85 volts and 831 CCAs when it's only rated at 590.
Okay, so now we're going to run this test in the freezer. So this thing's been in here, Ray, how long? 24 hours?
Yep.
Long time. Good battery, 623, 590, and it's 13 degrees. Burr doggies.
Hey, we have a situation oftentimes where batteries sent back to our interstate distributors and the batteries check good or have a result of being good on a conductance tester or load testing, etc. Well, what's happened sometimes is a customer comes in, it's 10, 15, 20 degrees outside, and the battery's that same temperature. Say we have a situation, they tested, as we're going to show here in just a little bit, about a situation, what conductance, how it reacts to colder temperatures. And so you test it at that point, and then you replace the battery because it shows to be bad. You put it in your shop, you send it back to Interstate at 70 degrees or 50 degrees or whatever it may be, much warmer, and it shows to be good.
All right, so we want to talk about making sure we are in the right temperature in there, because we talk about that with our testers. Make sure we do that and clean connections. So dirt, grease, grime, that actually makes a battery corrode or give you a bad result if you don't clean it off.
Yes.
So we want to make sure we got clean connectors, and look at your cable ends on your tester itself. I mean, they do get corrosion on them as well. So make sure we get those clean to make sure you got a good contact on there. And secure connections. Now, Gale, you and I have done this for quite a while. We've actually seen vehicles come in where they're missing the hold-down brackets or the cable's loose at the terminal.
Yes.
So we got to make sure that we got secure connections on there. And if you're doing test out of the vehicle, especially on commercial batteries, if you've got studs, we've always talked about making sure that you're using the lead and not the thread. I'm going to talk today a little bit about why we recommend checking on the lead and not the thread. There's a big difference in the way that these things will actually test. So hook up our leads here off the tester to the studs. Temperature on this thing, roughly about 80 degrees. So let's run through the test. Check connections. Look at that. I'm going to retry again. Going through the proper testing again. See what it shows. Oh, look at that, replace. So we're only showing 9 CCAs out of 925. So this is showing us replace the battery. So we're going to go back through, and now we're going to test this using our adapters. Make sure they're properly seated on there. And let's see what kind of result we get with this thing now. Once again, 80 degrees on the battery. We'll go through here and see what it shows. So, good battery. Now it's showing 766 out of 925. It is taking temperature into the equation on it, so we know that this thing's actually able to get, good enough to go ahead and put back out into service, even with the 766 rating on it. Anyway, there is a big difference in the way that you're testing this stud versus actually having it lead on lead. So we want to make sure if you need adapters and you don't have any, get with your dealers. Your distributors. They can get you the connectors to make sure you're getting the right fitment on there to get a right accurate test.
Testing a battery. We've talked about temperature. We've talked about variations here. Make sure that that battery is stable, that it's not, when we talk about stable versus unstable, if it's got a lot of charge that's been put on it and it hasn't settled down yet, hasn't dissipated that surface charge, as we're going to talk about in a few minutes. In that situation, make sure the battery's stable so you get an accurate reading. Conductance testers often, many of them, most of them, some of them, will tell you if there's surface charge built up on a battery. But I know we've got questions from the field in your.
Yes, so one of the big questions that we keep getting constantly is, how charging and surface charge actually will affect the test results.
Exactly.
So why is that, Gale?
Well, that surface charge, again, the battery is now unstable. Surface charge is going to build up on there, and the electrolyte inside the battery itself is not. It will stable that to a point to where it's going to be a static condition ready to test. But if it's unstable, if it's got too much surface charge built up on it, it won't be able to test it correctly.
All right, so let's talk about in-vehicle versus out-of-vehicle testing. There's a big difference in the way that is going to read the conductance on it. So on these remote posts, so remote posts can really throw you a nightmare, because if the resistance is too much as far as cables from where the battery's at versus the post itself, 9 times out of 10, Gale, it's going to tell you to go to the battery. Yes. So whether that's in the trunk or under the seat or in the fender well, those are always fun. So there is a big difference in the way that this thing's going to actually read coming out.
Because there might be 12, 15 feet between that remote post and where the battery is. That cable is resistance between point A and point B, isn't it?
Yes, sir. And that'll really throw it off. So make sure we know where we're at.
Yeah.
It is also different if you're testing it on the bench. So make sure if your tester is asking you, is it in vehicle or out of vehicle, make sure you got the right information in there.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about different types of chargers, but safety first, buddy.
Amen to that.
Before we get into that, making sure that you're wearing all safety glasses, gloves, taking your rings, various things off that are going to get caught there. How many welded rings have we had in that situation?
I'm a prime example.
Even though we know safety, we bypass it sometimes. So we're okay. Never bypass safety in that situation.
You never know when you're going to slip a wrench.
No, absolutely not. Short it across between the positive and negative. Also, well-ventilated areas. Anytime you're charging or around a battery, make sure that you're within a well-ventilated area, well enough that it's going to dissipate any of that smell. Rotten egg smell. Now, we've all smelled that if we've been around batteries. That's not a good sign. That's a very negative connotation.
Yeah, especially if you know it wasn't you that caused that.
Yes, absolutely. But that rotten egg smell is get away from the battery, let it cool down, etc. Monitor the charger. Make sure that you're not just placing a charger on a battery and leaving it for days, weeks, whatever may be the case. Monitor. Go out there and check that battery charger. Making sure that we do it right. That's what's important. Making sure safety, well-ventilated areas, rotten egg smell, whatever, monitor the charger. Making sure that we're doing those things correctly.
Because what would we have if we weren't monitoring it, Gale? What could happen?
Well, we could overcharge the battery. We could have that rotten egg smell come up, and we could have what is called a rapid disassembly.
There's 30.
What about the different types of chargers for different types of batteries?
There are a whole lot of different ones. So first off, we've got a maintainer charger.
Yes.
So keep in mind, a maintainer charger is designed to maintain the voltage that it's at. So as far as a true charger, no. These are designed more along the lines of once the battery's charged, and let's say it's going to go in storage mode, put the maintainer on it. Because that way it's going to keep that battery at that level it needs to be throughout the extended period it's going to be setting.
So not overcharging, but maintaining it at a high state of charge.
Exactly, and that's where we want to have it at. There are chargers designed for flooded. Now, keep in mind, there's flooded automotive. There's also flooded marine and deep cycle. So make sure you pick the right charger for those batteries in general. There are different charging algorithms for a flooded battery versus a deep cycle battery. So starting versus deep cycle.
Yeah.
Different chargers. Make sure you've got the right charger for that battery itself. And you've got AGM out there. Now, a lot of questions are around the AGM. Does it have to have a special charger? If the charger itself has dial selectors or switches for flooded or AGM, the charging parameters will be different, so you should be all right. But if your charger only says flooded or wet batteries or standard batteries, that's not going to work on an AGM. You will overcharge an AGM battery, and unfortunately, what it's doing is it's gassing out the water.
Yeah.
So that's never a good thing, because now you're going to dry the battery out, and there is a chance that we could get that possible rapid disassembly. We don't want that either. So make sure you've got the right charging algorithm set up on that as well. There are dual purpose as well, and you see that on your marine chargers, or you can see it on your regular standard automotive chargers. Make sure you've got the right setting for those batteries as well. And keep in mind, there are roll-around chargers that sometimes these things can go up to 200 amps. Now, 200 amps is only like a boost charge. Your battery's not going to take that 200 amps for infinity. So they're not really designed for that.
Most every dealer has a roll-around charger in their shop.
And they do that because they got to go outside and boost one to get it in.
Yeah, and so they go in there, go on the car and clamp it on there, and they may leave it for a while. What does that do, maybe even as far as the voltage for the computer on board?
We know that our computers don't like anything over 16 volts. Well, we know from data logging some of these chargers, you can see 17.5 volts. Well, I can almost guarantee you that our onboard computers, they're not going to like that.
So charge the battery, not the computer.
Exactly. Computers don't like to be charged up. Now, there are lithium chargers out there now too, because lithium is the big next thing, Gale.
Yes, it is.
So keep in mind that the algorithms on these chargers, yes, some of these are designed where they will do lithium. The lithium batteries do have a BMS, it's a battery monitoring system that will regulate what's coming in. There could be an instance though where this thing is pushing in with the charger that BMS could go, I can't keep doing this, so it's going to shut everything off. So make sure that if you are charging lithium, you've got the right charger for it as well.
You're dealing with that lithium, a very, very expensive battery. Make sure that you're doing it correctly.
Yeah. Lithium batteries, just so you guys are aware, they can go over $1,000 easy.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Well, you've talked about the different types of chargers, some of the safety. We've talked about some of the safety aspects of that. Let's talk about charging and how it functions to a degree, understanding the stages of chargers. Many of the chargers that are in the shops today are smart chargers, we like to say. They do different things based on a voltage level. When they get to that, they do different things. In fact, this is showing that they go in, first of all, to the bulk stage.
Why do they call that bulk?
Because it pushes a lot of current into that battery very fast, in that maybe a high current, maybe 10, 20 amps, very inrushing current going into this battery. Once that battery, that inrushing current, it raises the voltage, and once it goes to a voltage regulation, it trips that charger to go into the second stage, which is absorption, which is an important thing, because now the tapering of the current goes down, and as the current goes down, the voltage goes down on the battery to a small degree, but when it creeps back up and hits that next level of voltage regulation, it trips into the next stage, which is the float. Now, float is something where we just maintain the battery, kind of like you talked about a while ago, that it's not overcharging and it's floating, and it's setting at a constant rate of keeping that battery fully charged, not overcharging.
Kind of like the maintainer.
Yes, kind of like the maintainer. So a lot of these chargers have multiple stages, 3, maybe 6 types of stages, but bulk is typically the one in rushing current. They go into the absorption where it decreases the current and tapers it off, and then that's about 75% of the charge that is needed for the battery. But sometimes it's needed many hours of charging, not just 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Put it back on.
So that would mean that when we talk bulk, so it's taking and putting in the bulk of what we took out originally.
Right.
So now we're, as you said, we're 75% going back in. people keep asking the question or making the comment, I've charged this thing for 3 hours.
Yes.
This should be ready to go.
Oh, sure.
No, with all these different stages, we still have to have time to take care of replenishing everything we took out.
Sometimes,
And we don't want to create heat.
you're exactly right. Sometimes it's not going to take 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. It's going to take a day of charging to get this thing up to a full state of charge. So we need to remember that. Don't undercharge it and expect it to do the job
Exactly.
it's supposed to do.
So educate your customers about that as well. You can't just do this in 30 minutes and this thing's healed. So Gale, what is the number one thing to know about testers?
Use it.
Imagine
Use that tester consistently and constantly on the vehicles that come into your shop. Remember that battery diagnosis is so important. You know, it can throw off the entire electronic system sometimes when you're going through testing. Oh, we've got different things happening on there. Well, lo and behold, the battery was bad, causing some problems within the electronic system of the vehicle. That's not good.
That'll throw some codes in there.
Yes, codes, different types of codes. Anyway, owners and managers always consider the opportunity that this vehicle is right there in your shop. Take it personal. 25% of the batteries on the road are below CCA requirements.
That's not good.
No, that means 1/4 of all of the batteries on the road today are below that. They're in your shop tested. So as the battery begins to fail, it starts falling off that, what we call a knee curve in the engineering side. The battery's being steadily good, and it starts to hit a knee curve and starts to fall off that cliff faster and faster. So in that situation,
That's
if
not
it's
good.
starting to fail a little bit, it's going to fail rapidly the next 25%.
Oh yeah. And then, so you got your technicians and your service advisors. So what I've always done in the past is, you know, if you get good customers, you start collecting them.
Absolutely.
So when you're collecting customers, even if you were to leave the shop, those customers are going to want to know where you're going, and they're going to follow you.
It's that confidence level.
Yeah, because you've treated them right throughout their whole experience.
And you know, some of those customers have a daughter. They want to make sure that they take it to someone they have
Yeah.
confidence
So
in.
now you're bringing in the whole family.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a good thing. So we want to make sure that when you're testing these vehicles coming in, you know, 75% of what you're testing coming in, you know, they're going to be good.
So we're delivering good news.
Exactly. So that's going to make a happy customer. You've got to unfortunately prepare yourself for that time when those other 25% are going to be bad.
Yes.
So let's just say, you know, you got these customers that have been coming in for years and years and years. All this time you're saying, hey, good, everything's checking out good. Now we're getting down to that point where we got to start giving bad news. I mean, you've gone 150,000 miles with this battery.
Yes.
Okay, well now I'm getting to the point where it needs to be replaced. You build up that confidence level with your customer though. So when you give them this news, yes, in a way it is bad news, but it's good for them because you would hate for them to leave the shop and go to the grocery store, and when they come out, it won't start.
And a very high percentage of those are going to take your information and utilize
it exactly, because if you gave them or given them information all throughout these years of service and everything's been good and you've not shortchanged anything on them, this is actually good for them because now you're watching over them, whether it's their daughter or their son's car or their wife or their mother-in-law's, whoever. You've actually created that bond to where when you tell them, they're going to take that opportunity to go ahead and buy it. Or if you're giving them a marginal, we know this thing's going to fail sooner or later. We just don't know when. You can't predict it. You don't have a crystal ball. So you're going to be able to give them an educated source of information to say, here, this is what you got. Here's our options. We actually have the batteries in the shop. We can replace it now.
So what percentage do you think actually replaced their battery?
I'm going to say we're probably 71%.
Yeah, I think
It's going to be able to
I
do
think
that.
that's a great number. That's a very high number. So that means that confidence is already built up in you. You're telling them some bad news, but it's also good news because
Exactly.
they're not going to get caught out in that situation. So replacing the battery when needed.
Yeah, and at least, you know, managers.
Okay. So managers, develop a testing policy. Test every vehicle that comes in. You're in charge, so make sure that that's done in your shop for your advantage. Check those repair orders. Empower your team members to require a test. Compensate team members who test in that situation. As we just talked about, 25% of those batteries on the road need replacing. 71% have built up a confidence in you to get it done.
Yeah, and you know, with your service advisors, make sure you're communicating with your techs. Make sure that they're giving you that test, because that's the confidence level there. So as you're delivering the results, you've got paperwork there. So it's either good news or it's going to be the bad news over time. So we want to make sure that we're giving them the accurate information. The technicians, now look, a bad battery can throw off any of these test results that you're actually looking through in there. If you've got components that are coming in and you've got a code in the computer locking, talking about voltage, this could be all about the battery itself and not necessarily the component.
You're exactly
So
right.
we've got to make sure that we've got these customers and we're making them happy. An unhappy customer can ruin your shop in no time.
Yes.
We have social media now, so all it takes is one bad survey.
Since we started working with the Interstate battery, using these battery testers right here, we've been really able to up our battery cells tremendously. We've just about doubled it since we've gotten this battery tester back here. It's been extremely useful with helping us be able to get really fast results and be able to go ahead and let our customers know what they need, what's wrong with their battery, or if it's not the battery, if it's something like the starter or the alternator, it helps us determine that as well too. It's helped us become more informed, better salesmen, and be able to just kind of explain things better to our customers as a whole. Going ahead and doing that's literally doubled our battery cells year over year. So 10 out of 10 recommend.
So Gale, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Yes. We've talked about corrosion and connections and stability of the battery and charging and various other things. A lot of important information in this seminar today. So we want to make sure you follow all of that. And if you have questions, please, I'll give you Jeff's home number. Now, we will just call us, let us know, call customer service. We have information and have those for you, because we're all about trying to help you in this situation. So thank you for being on board with us today and following through this. Thank you again for all that you do for us.
Hi there, my name is Mallory Metz and I am a brand activation manager here at Interstate Batteries, and today I am so excited to be teasing out our next program. If you are not already an Interstate dealer, you are going to want to become one, because come September 1st, you are going to have the chance to win a very exclusive sweepstakes to the big race in Daytona in February. So if you want more details, be sure to scan the QR code below and register to become a dealer today.